Welcome back. In this video, we will look at the TODO starter application. So I'm going to give you a zip file that you can download, and then we will start working from that TODO starter. But before we go to the starter project, I first want to make sure that everybody is logged in currently and that you have your app up and running. So you needed to log in, create a new account, and you needed to create a new app called TODO. Just note that you will be on the Cloud 99 trial. So if you started this and maybe wait a bit and then start again, could be that your 14 days trial expired and you cannot use it anymore. So one way to overcome this is to go back to manage. Right at the bottom, you can delete your application and then just create a new application again. Then you'll have a new app again on the 14 days trial. Okay, so the best one is to actually go and get your Springboard app. Go and get that one for free, and then you know you've got one for life. Right, so make sure that you are on your dashboard of your new TODO app so that you can see your application ID, the API keys, and so forth. So this page is very important. So the application ID will be unique. Your Android API key and iOS API keys will also be unique, and it will be linked to your application ID. So by just clicking the refresh button there, you can also get a new key for those two. If you feel that somebody actually got access to this, then you can just refresh or regenerate your keys. Right, so let's get the starter zip file first. So you can go to bit.ly/Backendless starter. And this Backendless starter project, you can then download by just clicking that button. So make sure you get that zip file downloaded, and you can unzip that file and open it up in Visual Studio Code. Right, when you open this in Visual Studio Code, it will say Backendless TODO starter, and it will open up with a lot of errors. So in order for you to get past those errors, we will just run Flutter pub get, and then all of your errors should be gone. So if you go to your pubspec.yaml, you will see that we're basically using the default one, Cupertino icons, that was with this project. Whenever you start a new project, you get Cupertino icons. So I added provider, I added Flutter slidable, I added Backendless SDK, tuple, and shared preferences. So shared preferences also creates a file there called generated plugin registrant. So this file will be created by just installing this package. Also make sure that you are on. If you run Flutter upgrade, make sure that you've got the newest version of Flutter installed also. So the one that I have currently is Flutter 2.5.2, and I've got Dart 2.14.3. So you will also see that it indicates Flutter 2.5.2 there. So if you ran Flutter upgrade and it took some time to upgrade this for you, make sure that you close down Visual Studio Code, open it back up again, and just run Flutter upgrade again to make sure that you are on the correct version. So I'm running 2.5.2 for this project, and the Dart tools are 2.14.3. And then you can see it on the right-hand side as well. Right, so let's go and have a look at some of the files that we have here. So this is the pubspec.yaml. That's the only few lines I added here was those. And yeah, you cannot see anything else in here. There's nothing else. I've just added provider, Flutter slidable, Backendless SDK, and tuple, as well as shared preferences. So that's all for the pubspec.yaml. Okay, so let's go to models quickly. In the models, you will see that I've got two there. I've got the normal TODO.dart. Okay, so in the SQL version of our TODO application that we created previously, we also had this class called TODO, and I think it's exactly the same. So we have a title for the TODO, whether the TODO is done or not, and when it was created. There's a constructor for this TODO, and then we converted the TODO, which is a normal object, to a JSON. So basically just to a map. So we return back a map that has a key that's of type string and a value that can be any value. So we converted the title to the title. Done cannot be true or false. So if it is true, we will have a 1. If it's false, it's going to be a 0. Created, we go to the created value that is date time, and we convert it to milliseconds since epoch. Okay, and then we get also the from JSON, where we pass in the JSON file or the map. And you can see there, this map is dynamic. It comes like this. It comes from Backendless also. So you will see when we work with that. And we convert this map that we get from Backendless to a new to-do. That to-do needs a title, whether it's done or not, and the date created. And this is how we converted it. So if it's a 1, we convert to a true. Otherwise, if it's a 0, it's going to be false. Get back the title as a string and get back the created field, convert it, or it is a double, convert that back to a datetime object. Okay, so it's the to JSON and the from JSON to convert them. And then we've got the operator to compare, the double equal sign, and with it is the hash code. So this is a lot the same as we did in our SQL example of the to-do application. Right, before I continue in this class, I've also added something more into the models, and that is the to-do entry. Now, this to-do entry will directly correlate to a table in Backendless called to-do entry. So in that table, we will have a field called to-dos that will hold a map, and that map we can see as JSON data. So for every to-do entry, we will need a list of all the to-dos, and we want to also have a username connected to it. There will also be an object ID, a created and an updated. So I'm going to have a look at this now inside of Backendless. In the to-do entry then, this is what's required. And then if we go to JSON and from JSON, we are just converting this to-do entry to a JSON file. And here we are converting the JSON file back to a to-do entry. So let's just quickly have a look at this to-do entry and how it correlates into Backendless. So I'm going to open up an app that I've already done where we've got exactly this situation. So basically in Backendless, if you go to data, we will create this later on. We will have a to-do entry class there, or a to-do entry app table. And if you look at Visual Studio Code now for this to-do entry, it correlates 100%. It's exactly the same thing. So we've got to-do entry there, we've got to-do entry there, and it's exactly the same spelling. Then we've got fields for to-dos, and there you can see there's your to-dos field. And it is a JSON type. And that JSON type is the same as the map that we're working in Flutter with. If you look at the username there, which is a normal string, there's the username that's a normal string. Then we've got an object ID. So remember, when we had an overview of Backendless, we said that for every table, wherever you create a new entry, there will be a unique object ID for that entry. So that is automatically there for us. You don't create that. That gets created for you automatically. So when you create your classes and you want to change or delete something in a table, you will probably need to have its object ID. So that's why I added it here as well. So you can see for the object ID, it's a string. So I'm going to have it as a string object ID. And you will also see created and updated. You can see the data type there is also date time. And it's exactly the same that we're referring to here. It's also date time. Note the spelling on these fields. It must be exactly the spelling as you've got there in Backendless. And these are created automatically for you. If you go to your schema, you will see also that your owner ID, your created and updated, you cannot even delete them. They must be there. Okay, so the only two that I added there was to-dos and username. And you can see object ID is also even not there. It's something that gets created for you and you cannot do anything else with it. Okay, so make sure that if you want to have access to the object ID, the created and the updated fields, you have to add them in your custom classes also, or in your models. So in this model, the only two fields that I'm really interested in is to-dos and username. So those are the two fields I want. But these three fields I also want access to, but they are created automatically for you. Right, so if we just quickly have a look at what we have here. For example, inside of this to-dos, you will see what I've done is for every to-do, it starts with 0, then 1, and it carries on for every to-do. So the key will be basically just an integer value, and then we will have the value, which will be a map. And that map is, in fact, just a normal to-do. It's done, yes or no, 0 or 1. There will be a title, and they will be created. So if we go back to our class for the to-do entry, if you look at a to-do, it's this part there. So let's look at TODO. You can see if we convert it to a JSON, it will have a title, a done, and created in milliseconds. And that's your double there. That's your milliseconds since epoch. So those are the values that we create using this TODO class and using toJSON. Okay, let's go back to this TODO class also. At the top, there's two functions that I added that you won't see in our SQL example. Now, these two I use to specifically get back the data from Backendless in this manner that you see now, and also to actually save it to Backendless. Okay, so if we want to convert our own to-do list to a map, it means we want to save this map now to Backendless, then we will need a list of to-dos that we're going to pass in. So obviously, in the user interface, we will ask the user to enter a list of to-dos. He will start entering his to-dos, and when he's done, we send this list of to-dos and convert them to a map so that we can save it in Backendless. So what do? We create an empty map. We run a for loop through that to-dos that was passed in. So if there's a list of 5 to-dos, then this for loop will run 5 times. And we go to the empty map and we add, and you can see there, first the i's value, so it will start at 0, so that's why you see the 0 there. If we scroll up, you will see a 1. So if there's a list of 2, this is basically the list. So we start with a 0, then a 1, then a 2, and so forth. So that's the key. And the value will be going to the specific to-do and converting it to JSON. So if you go down, we convert it to a JSON, so you'll see something like this, a title with a title. Done with a 1 or a 0, created with some sort of double value. And that's exactly what you see there. Now let's go to the second function there. Now we need to get back this data from Backendless. So if we get it back as a map. That map needs to be converted to a list of to-dos so that we can show it in our application. So we convert the map to a to-do list. What do we do first? Well, we need to take in that map. So we get the map. It's this one here that we've got. Let's say it's this one with a 0 and a 1. We create an empty list. We run through the map, and that will just be a 0 and a 1. So it will be 2 times this for loop will run. And going to that empty list, we add a new to-do. So it's going to be todo.fromJSON, and we pass in a map with a value. So the map that was passed in, that key there will be either the 0 or the 1. And that key there, indicating the key here, will then return back the value for me. And the whole value will be this part from that opening bracket there up until the closing bracket, which again is some sort of a map. And from JSON then runs this one that takes in that map, that's a JSON, and it converts it back to a to-do. And then every single to-do will then be added to the to-dos. Okay, I hope that makes sense, and that's basically just looking into how it will look on Backendless. So we will create this now, so don't worry about that. Let's go back and have a look at some of the other files. So I think we are done with these 2 models. So make sure that you understand what we've done in these 2 models. This class, to-do entry, will basically be the column that we will have in Backendless. Okay, and then let's go and start with the main dot. So if you look at the main dot, it starts right at the top. It runs my app. It goes into a multi-provider, a change notifier that provides user service and the to-do service. And then it goes into the material app there, and it uses our route manager to generate a route, and the initial route is the loading page. Okay, and it also doesn't show the debug banner. Okay, so let's just have a look at this one quickly. We've got 2 services, the user service and the to-do service. So if you go back to your services, you will see there's a user service and there's a to-do service. Okay, so I've just opened up some methods or functions that we will be creating later on, just to give you some sort of skeleton project that we can change later on. Okay, so in the user service, we will have a function called reset password, where we will pass in the username and we will reset the password in here. Currently, it's just returning OK. We will also have login user, where we send a username and a password, and we log in the user. And if the result is okay, we know it's logged in. We will have a function called logout user to log out a user that's currently logged in. We will also have a check if the user is logged in function. Just to check first when the app starts, did the user log in before, yes or no, and we allow him to a specific screen, and we'll look at that now. We will also have a function called check if the user exists by passing also in a username to check if that specific user exists. So that is inside of our registration UI, where the user will start typing a username, and if that username already exists, we will not allow him to register. There's also a create user function where we pass in a new user object and we create that user. So that will take place on your registration screen. Okay, and then I've got this same get human readable error function that I had in the SQL counterpart as well. So I've just added a few messages here that could pop up. For example, email address must be confirmed first. So then I just give out a human readable error. Please check your inbox and confirm your email address and try to log in again. So if you encounter any other problems or any other exceptions that you want to catch in here, then you can do so. You can add them here. So these are just a few. So it's email address must be confirmed, the user already exists, invalid login or password, the user account is locked out due to too many failed logins, unable to find a user with a specified identity, unable to resolve the host, no address associated with the host name. And that is mostly when there's no internet connection. So that's when I just added this message. It seems as if you don't have an internet connection, please connect and try again. Okay, so this is the user service, and obviously we will come back to this, but you can see it's a change notifier, it's the user service, so this one will be one of our provider classes that provider needs to provide for us. And that's what you see here. You see the user service there. Okay, so let's go to the to-do service. Now, for the to-do service, we will just do three things. We will create a new to-do, we will delete the to-do, and we will toggle the to-do to be done or not done. And then we will get a list of all the to-dos that's currently on Backendless, and we will save a to-do entry. So getting the to-dos, we'll need a username, and whether it's the first time it's loading or not, we will talk about that later on. And then there's a save to-do entry that also takes in a username and whether it is in the UI or not. And that we will also talk about later. Why do we need to know if it's in the UI or not? Okay. Then I've created some two helper services also. So for the user service, just to take out some of the business logic there. So if the user is in the UI, so if they create a new user, we pass in the context, the email, the password, and the name of that new user. And then we will use this user service also to create a new user. If we log in a user, there will be a build context. We will need the email and the password. If we reset the password, we will need a build context and the email that we need to reset. And if we log out the user, we just need a context. So it logs out the user that's currently logged in, so we don't even need the username. Okay, and then if we go to the to-do helper, we will have a function called refresh the to-dos in the UI. So that's the list of to-dos. If you want to refresh them, get the newest data from Backendless. This is the function that we're going to call. And we're going to save all to-dos in the UI. So if you click on the save button in the UI, then we're going to call this function to save everything and to create a new to-do in the user interface also. So if we're creating a new to-do, we will also run this function here. So it's some services that we'll come back to later on in order to complete. Right, so if we go to the widgets quickly, we will have an app progress indicator. So you can go through this one. This is just, you can see there it's a circular progress indicator with a height of 20 and a width of 20 and some colors. So you can go and have a look at it. There's an app text field. So it's a text field I'm using everywhere. And this one takes in a text editing controller, the text for that text field. So you're going to maybe say something like, please enter your username or something like that. That will be the text. What will be the keyboard type? Will it be only numeric numbers or numeric that needs to be entered, only text, and so forth. And also whether you want to hide the text or not. If it's a password, you want to hide the text. If not, you do not want. So default, it's set to false. Okay, and then we use those values, the controller. There we use the controller. The label text is used there. And the keyboard type is there. as well as high text is there. So you can also have a look at the app text field. So this is the one that we will use throughout the application. If you go to dialogues, just a simple show snack bar. We need the context and we need a message, and it displays the message. For the to-do card, it takes in a to-do object. There will be a function for the delete action, and there will be a function for the toggle action. So if you go down, you can see the to-do gets used in a lot of places where we get the value, whether it's done or not. We get the created day, the month, and the year. We show the title and whether it's done or not. We're going to show a line through or nothing. Okay, and then there's the delete action. There we use the on tap for the delete when we slide it, and that's why we use this Flutter slidable. Let me just go back there. And then there's also a toggle action, and the toggle action will be used on changed for the checkbox list style. Okay, so you can just have a look at this. It's basically similar to what we did in the SQL application. Right, so we've done the models. We need to look at the pages and the routes. So in the routes, that's quite easy, just like we've done a million times before. There's your login page. That's your initial page. There's a register page, a to-do page, a loading page. Okay, and there's just the pages. Login, register, to-do, and loading. And then an exception but this exception is only for you as if you leave out one of these. Okay, so you can also see in the main.dot, we are referring to this route manager.generate route. The initial route is the loading page. So we'll look at the loading page now. Okay, so let's go to routes is done. Pages, we need to look at pages. We've done services, we've done widgets. Okay, so let's look at the pages. So this is the first page that actually runs. So this loading screen runs. In the init state, you can see that we run this part. So we will look at that now. In the build, very simple. There's just some decoration. There will be an icon that shows a note. There will be a sized box of a height of 30, and then there will just be some text that says loading, please wait. And you can see there's no other logic in this thing at all. So something obviously happens in here. So we'll come back to this one. Okay, so there's a login page. So in the login page, we have a username controller, a password controller, just to get the username and the password to log in the user. In the init state, we set up the text editing controllers. In the dispose, we dispose of them. So make sure you do that. Very important, this dispose. Okay, and then down the line here, you can see that we've got a scaffold, a container, there's a stack in the center, there's a single child scroll view, so that when you start typing inside of these app text fields, that it doesn't give you an error when you scroll. So make sure that's a single child scroll view. Now, if you go down, it will have the text that says welcome. It will ask you to enter your email address. There will be a username controller linked to it. And here you can see the password controller linked to it. So please enter the email. That's the label text. Please enter your password. And then there's a login button. There will be a text button, 2 text buttons. You can see this one is an elevated button. So this one looks like a button. And these two, register a new user and reset password, will just look like normal text, but it's actually also a button. And then we will come back and code what we need to do when they get clicked. So the only one that actually works now is this register a new user that takes you to the register page. Now let's look at the register page then. For the registration, we will need a username, the name of the person, and then the password. So there's 3 text editing controllers. We dispose of all 3 in the build. Again, basically the same thing again. We have register user. We ask, please enter your email address, please enter your name, enter your password. And then there's a register button. And whatever we will need to do to register, we'll do in this on pressed. And that's it. You can also see in the positioned, there's a positioned icon that shows the arrow to go back, which just pops the context, which makes it go back to the login screen. Okay, that's the register page. Now, if we go to the to-do page, you will see that we have a to-do controller, text editing controller to create a new to-do, and we dispose of it. Now we go down, We will have a refresh button that calls the refresh to-dos in UI. And you remember we have that as part of the services. And it's going to be in this helper to-do. So if you look at that helper to-do, there's the refresh to-dos in UI. Okay. So when you click on the refresh button, we will refresh the to-dos in the UI. If you click on the save button, we will save all the to-dos to Backendless. If you click on the add button, we will show a new dialog. This dialog will say, have a title, create a new to-do. Please enter your to-do. There will be a cancel and there will be a save. If we cancel, it just pops the context, which closes down the dialog. And if you click on save, we will call create new to-do in the UI. And that's again inside of the helper to-do. So we will get back to that one again later. Okay, and then there's also an exit to app, which when you click on it will log out the user. That function is also inside of the helper user. So we'll get back to that one later. And then we will see that there's some person's to-do list. So obviously we won't always have John's to-do list there. We will change that to something else later on, depending on the user that's currently logged in. And then we will have a list view of 2 to-dos, and both of them will show demo to-do and when it was created. The toggle action, to-do toggle action, does nothing yet, and the delete action also does nothing yet. Right, and that's all the pages. So just remember, in the loading screen, we said this will happen first. So this is inside of init app. So if you go and you hold down Control and you click on Initialize App, it takes you to this class called init.dart. I just want to make sure we've done all the models, we've done all the pages, we've done all the routes, we've done all the services, we've done all the widgets. So the only 2 that's left is init.dart and main.dart. We've covered main.dart, so init.dart is the last one we need to cover. Now remember, when does this class actually run? So you can see inside of init app, we've got a few static fields there. I've got an app ID, I've got an API key for iOS, and I've got an API key for Android. And you can see it's got nothing in there. So where will we get these values? So let's just quickly complete those values. So if you go back to your application, you will see you've got your values here. So your application ID, you can just click there to copy it to the clipboard. So you go into your application ID, it's this one, and you'll paste it there. Please don't use mine. I'm going to refresh mine after this video. So do not use mine, use your own. Okay, then you've got the API key for Android and iOS. So let's go back and we get the API key for Android. You can refresh it there. Let's go back, and this is the one for Android. And you paste it there. And let's get the key for iOS. It's this one. So I'm going to copy it, go back, and use it there. Right, so now we have this init app set up. We've got the API key, we've got for Android and iOS, and we've got the application ID. So what does this initialize app do? So you can see it takes in a context. It runs init app as part of the Backendless API. It sets the application ID as this application ID. It sets the iOS key as this one, and the Android API key as that one. Okay, so this basically initializes your app. So this part could take a second or two to execute. So there's an await. It's asynchronous. It runs in the background, and it waits until you are authenticated and you've got a connection to your app. Then what we're going to do is to get a result by calling check if the user logged in. So remember, we've not done that yet. So inside of this user service, we're going to check if the user logged in. So it's this one. This function will run and it will tell us, yes, the user logged in or not. And then depending on whether the user is logged in or not, if the result is okay, we take him to his to-do page. If the result is not okay, we take him to the login page. Then it means probably this guy never used the app before. He needs to register or something happened. Okay, so where does this happen? Remember, in main, we start off with the loading page. Go to pages. In the loading page will start displaying why. Even though this part runs, there's an await keyword in there. So this runs. When it's done, it's not going to wait for the await. Remember that. So it starts at the top. It initializes everything it needs to. It runs this, and then it continues to the build. So what you will see is loading, please wait on the screen. And then as soon as this initialize app is done, this part is done, and you have checked that the new user is logged in or not. Only then we will make a decision and go to those two pages automatically. So the logic has been taken away from the loading page. It's inside of this initialize app, and in here we decide whether we go to the to-do page or to the login page. Okay, quite a mouthful for the starter project. So let's go to the main.dart and let's just run this and see if it's going to work. Okay, there you can see the loading screen, and we are at John's to-do list. Right, so why did we end up on this page? So if you have a look at this again, it's going to go to the loading page. The loading page will show that loading page icon, but it will run this initialize app. Initialize app will initialize your app, and that's basically the time it took for us to see that logo, is how long it took for this await as well as this one to finish. Okay, so then it goes through and it checks if the user logged in. If it's okay, we go to the to-do page, and you can see we are currently at the to-do page, which means this function returned back okay. So if we wanted to go to the login screen, let's change that to an O, and let's run this again. So then it's not okay, and we should get to this welcome screen for the login. So you can see then, please enter your email address, please enter your password. We can go and register a new user. Nothing will work yet. Go back, and we can also click on reset password, which will currently do nothing. Right, so everything currently seems to be working. Just one more thing I need to quickly show you there. If you go into Android and you go into, just close this app, you go into source, you go into main, and you go into your Android manifest. Just something that you need to note. I added this one line into this manifest. So obviously you have this one line also because I gave you my project folder. But if you need to go and create this on your own, just remember that in your Android manifest, you will need to add this one line. And this just gives your Android app permission to access the internet. So if you're just creating or running your application in debug mode, so it's the debug APK that gets created, then you don't need this permission. But as soon as you're going to have a release APK, then, or a release build, then you must have this as part of your Android manifest. So just make sure that you also include this in your Android manifest. So you get to that by going to app, source, main, Android manifest. You need to add this line directly above your application opening tag. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching the video. See you in the next one.